Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. The case that I'm going to be looking into today is the case of the longest serving prisoner, Charles Fossard. This case was suggested by Cade. So thank you for that. I appreciate any suggestions you guys have. I'd just like to let you know, I mean no disrespect whatsoever to anyone I talk about in this case. I just gathered all the information off the internet and compiled it into a video for educational purposes. Let me just say that this case happened a long time ago. The information on it is quite scarce. I tried my best to gather everything that I could. But it actually happened in 1903 when Charles murdered a man and he would spend the rest of his life incarcerated. This case was actually dubbed by the media as the Skye Tragedy. On the 28th of June in 1903, the police came across the body of William Thomas Ward. He had been shot 5 times in his own home with a pea rifle. This occurred in Skye, Australia, hence why the newspapers dubbed it that. It's just south of Melbourne. Of course, the police began investigating the case. There was this pair of boots that had been stolen from William, and they had this distinctive kind of pattern on the sole, and they were looking for these boots because they thought that whoever had these boots was most likely going to be the murderer. They came across a man 2 weeks later. He was called Charles Fossard. They were actually charging him for vagrancy at the time. He was actually picked up not far from the scene of the crime, and if you don't know what vagrancy is, it's basically being homeless and jobless. It was literally a crime to be wandering sort of from place to place without the means to support yourself financially, and that's what he was arrested for. Whilst he was in custody, he admitted that he had had a pea rifle in his possession and that he burned it somewhere in the ranges near Dandenong, I apologise if I pronounced that wrong, where he then walked to Frankston, and that was where he was actually arrested by a detective. And guess what Charles was wearing on his feet? He was wearing those distinctive boots that had actually been stolen from William. The police began the search for the rifle. Charles came along and they went out searching for where he'd been camping and obviously the gun. I don't believe they actually ever found the gun from what I could find. Charles Lucas Edmund Kendall Siddy Fossard was a Frenchman who was 21-year-old at the time. He was a former sailor who had jumped ship at Sydney, and he had been in the country for around 3.5 years. He spoke broken English, but he did speak it quite fluently. He wasn't known to the authorities like before this incident of vagrancy, and of course he was interrogated at length by the police. It was actually thought that he had camped in a shed on this cricket ground, where many travellers often found shelter for the night. He was a vagrant down on his luck, and he had gone to William Ford seeking help, seeking shelter, I don't know, but William turned him down, and that was when he killed him. He was also seen by various members of the public in lots of vicinities kind of around sort of where the crime was committed. A few days later, Charles actually admitted to shooting William 5 times with the pea rifle that he had stolen that same day. He didn't say why he killed William, just that he had, but as I said, it's thought that it was because he turned him away and he wouldn't help him and he refused him refuge. On the 21st of August, he came up against the criminal court and they put forward proof that Charles was insane. He was ordered to be detained under the pleasure of His Excellency the Governor. He was accused of being unsound of mind and suffered from delusions. Shortly after his arrest, Charles actually had said something to a detective that implied that he was also involved in another case. This case was where a man named Sultan Alim was savagely hacked to death with an axe. He did make a statement that he had murdered this man, but he later recanted it. As I said, he was declared insane and he would spend the rest of his life on J Ward of Melbourne's Ararat Lunatic Asylum. It seems like in those times it was really common for a mental health diagnosis to coincide with a really lengthy sentence. So although these patients would seemingly have it more lax than life in prison, it would also mean that the pro system was quite simply out of reach for them, and more often than not they'd never get out. It was also widely believed at the time that somebody so deranged to have committed such a crime may just sort of do the same thing again if they were ever released. And that meant that they wouldn't often never be released. And if they committed a crime at such a young age, like Charles did, he was 21, He would have literally only had 21 years outside of it and the rest were inside of it. And I think that's really sad. I know obviously this was over 100 years ago now, but to condemn someone with a mental health illness like that is just really, really sad. At the same time, I guess they wouldn't have had the drugs and stuff that we have now that could help people to deal with life. I don't know, it's just a sad situation. Charles literally never got out, and he remained there until his death at the age of 92. That was on the 19th of June in 1974. All in all, it meant that Charles Fossard actually served out nearly 71 years inside. And he served them in a place that was described as a terrible place. It reportedly had a bucket in the middle of the room to use as a toilet. People were forced to sleep on concrete floors. When it came to feeding time, with some patients, it was like feeding animals at a zoo. In fact, they probably get it better than what these people did. Some people were in straitjackets that were never taken off because they were too mad, and so they literally had to sort of dunk their heads into this food bucket like an animal would. The ward conditions were just horrific, and what they had to live in was just vile. Eating from a bowl with your hands sort of forced, I don't know, here or behind you, using your face to eat your food, and going to the toilet in the middle of the room in a bucket, which must have been horrendous and must have been so much disease, and who knows how often that was changed. They were forced to sleep on the floor. It probably wasn't changed very often, to be honest. It was just horrific, and poor Charles, like many others, never got to see the light of day again. They just stayed there forever. Construction of this asylum actually began in 1859, and the facility was opened in October. In 1887, it was converted for the use as a maximum security psychiatric ward for the criminally insane. J Ward officially closed in January of 1991, and in 1993, just 2 years later, it was reopened as a museum providing tours. So you can go online, you can look all this up, you can buy tickets to go around J Ward and take a tour of what these poor mental patients went through at the time. But yeah, if you guys have any more suggestions, let me know, I'll look into them for you. Give me a big thumbs up if you've enjoyed this video, and subscribe to my channel if you enjoy similar content to this. Anyway guys, that's all I have today on the case of Charles Fossard. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye!